Yeah, the name of this song is Sunrise. Sunrise. This is for all the little brothers who sometimes need a brother who's further along the path to share some wisdom with them, to help them out. This is for the mothers. I give this to you. Yeah. Mothers, rising suns. What does it mean to you? What does it mean to me? The sun must rise. You, my son, must rise. Rise like the beautiful light in the sky. Some parents raise their children. Others are only caretakers. For you to be raised up, to live as the king man you were born to be, you must first know who and what you are. You are the result of billions of people. Mothers, fathers, grandmothers, grandfathers, great-grands, and so on, working together, time after time, and time before time, to create you. You are all of the wishes and prayers and work of your ancestors, the ones who came before you and who whisper love and guidance to you every day. My son, as a man, you will have three main objectives: to preserve, protect, and provide. You must preserve the way and culture of your family and community. This way and culture must always advance and change so that you can always face life's challenges with the proper tools and culture. You must protect your home, loved ones, and all that you work for. There's no point in working for anything, my son, if you do not have the ability to protect it. And you must provide for your loved ones. Never walk away from your responsibilities. Never let your family go hungry. The 3 P's: provide, preserve, protect. Son, you are the spark of all life. It all begins with you. You are the light bearer. You must shine light through all darkness. Out of that darkness comes you. Come forth and be the answer and solution. Never be the problem. Listen to my words and understand all that I say to you, because our survival depends upon it. You must become the greatest warrior in your own way. It doesn't mean that your life should be filled with fighting, but whatever you do, you must do it to perfection. Be perfect only means to be complete. So never do anything halfway. Complete the work. Perfect your skills. Perfect your talents. Your talents are not those things that people do for fame and on stage and on TV, like dancing and singing and rapping and painting or anything like that. Your talents are your arms, your legs, your feet, your toes, your eyes, your fingers, your ears, your nose, all of those things, your brain. You were born with all that you need to perfect and complete your life. You are using your talents even now as you listen to me. You are talented. You do have a voice, and you are a genius because you have the mind and the talent of all of the ancestors whose blood still runs through the veins in your body. You are your ancestors. You are the ones who created civilization. You are the pyramid builder. You are the one who walked across the clouds. You created reading, writing, language, astronomy, mathematics, astrology, psychology, alchemy, and all of the science of this world. You, my son, are that spark of genius. You are the light that makes the mystery uncover itself. Young man, When you are sitting on your throne as the prince, you are the owner of your world, the author of your life. There is no good thing that the work of your hands and mine will not bring to you. Your mother held you in her womb, and you were a mystery to everyone but her. She knew you as my story, because you are the last page of her story. Now you are her light. You are the sun that she raised from the dark waters of her womb. You are her greatest work. You have the job of being the man that many who came before you could only dream of being. Sunrise, sunrise, mothers, rising suns, mothers with rising suns.
Oh, another quick drop off. Peace. Welcome, everyone. Good dawning. Good dawning to all of you who are tuning in. Those of you coming in from the archives later, and those of you tapping in from other mediums that will be used for archival at some point. I want to welcome you to community and, of course, to the Anu Nation, the Anu ministry. And I definitely trust and will that you all are having, for those of you in the time zone where you're just getting up or you're getting prepared for some of the things that you need to do for this day, I trust and will that you're having a productive dawning so far. So, yeah, we've started a new month of topics, of course. And this is Chief Yuya speaking, by the way. But we've began a new month of topics, and we are currently speaking about the idea of the solstice and how the solstice represents itself and symbolically presents itself and represents itself through so many different spiritual traditions. And yesterday on Chief Speaks, we just kind of went over some cursory information just in terms of the actual nature of the sun itself, and some of the theories surrounding what the sun is, and the way that it actually transmits solar radiation, and then I shared also some of my own theory in terms of where it's powered from, and how it sustains itself, and its relationship to the feminine principle. Because of course often we look at the sun as solely a masculine principle, but as you get further and further into pretty much any of these teachings, when you scratch underneath, what you start to come to the conclusion of is, nothing is one way, and the mono placements, or that we kind of place on things in terms of our understandings of different things that vibrate and pulsate throughout the galaxy and the universe, is really a product just of our Western programming. It has to be this or it has to be that. Sometimes we don't understand the natural evolution outside of even binary assignments. So we spoke about that a bit, and of course, it being a critical conversation, because the sun that we usually acknowledge, which is really the demiurge, being the star of this solar system, and really, like I said yesterday, the only star in this solar system. So it's important to understand what a star is and its significance and its role inside of what it is that we do. What it is that we do as a people. So, we've been dealing with that concept of the solstice, and there's something that I wanted to address lightly. I think that may help some people out. I've been getting a lot of questions, and before I do that, because I like to always acknowledge the early risers. Peace, brother Haru. And let me say that to you, because I know I usually about 7:45 he has to leave and go to work. Brother Anwar, Sister Georgina, Let's see. She says 13 hours in Hague. Okay. She always gives us the time. Sister Fase and Strong Mind, Strong Body Fitness, Chawalombos, Akili, uh, Sister Cicely and Akili. I was looking for your contribution yesterday. Yeah, you're supposed to give us that perspective on you know, your Nigerian voyage or Nigeria voyage. Yeah. Sister Jennifer, Mama Sadaka, of course, Sister Marva, Brother Dietrich, Agbo Ato, peace to you as well, Brother Keith as well. And let's see, I'll give you a little rhythm, Nicole, even though I don't think and we got any other Nicoles in the spot, but I'll give you some for love. Sister Nicole and Sister Diana, of course. So yeah, and those of you who come in, people usually filing. And Sister told me yesterday that the reason a lot of times people come in at the 20-minute mark is because the notifications for the segments get sent out 20 minutes after the segment begins. At least that's when she receives them. So that would make sense. But either way, it's all good. Keely says, sorry, Chief, I took the kids fishing. All right. Okay. So anyway, one of the things I wanted to speak about, I know I haven't really addressed this in a while, and it's for good reason. Is because sometimes like I said, we get too locked in and caught up in the movements and the actual recipes of our work and things that we want to do without really honestly and truly addressing the ingredients of the work. So there's a certain mentality and a psychology and emotional disposition that's necessary in order for your work to be effective and for your work to do what it's supposed to do. So I've taken some time, as many of you have probably noticed, peace, Nicole Gordon, as many of you have probably noticed, and I haven't really spoken about more the ritualistic or ceremonial aspects. You remember all the trouble I was having with that word yesterday? I kept leaving out the S. Instead of saying ceremoniously, I kept saying ceremonially. Something doesn't sound right. Something doesn't sound right. Yeah. I was tripping over a lot of words yesterday, actually. But so yeah, I've kind of left out a lot of the ritual work and that speak and that talk and that information. And of course, because I've already covered a lot of that. So at some point you kind of have to transition into a space where you look at the intent and the motivation behind what it is that you want to do. And I'll give you an example. A lot of times people will reach out to me and say, Chief, I want this type of ritual done, or I want that type of ritual done. And I may tell them, and a lot of times they don't appreciate it, but I may tell them, well, let's do a reading on it first. Because the truth is, 9 times out of 10, you don't know the ritual that needs to be done for yourself. So to say, oh, okay, I want a spiritual bath. Oh my goodness. Excuse all that noise in the background, please. But I want a spiritual bath done, or I want this done, or this or that. A lot of times we think we know what's needed, but that's why it's important to get that advice or that guidance to find out what's actually needed, of course, right? So I tried to really take some time, or I tried to take some time over the past, maybe, I'd say it's probably been about 2 years, I would say, over the past about 2 years, to really just address the mentality and the thought that and the actual zen of it, the actual zen that goes behind the rituals and things that we want to do, not only so we can understand what needs to be done when it needs to be done, but also so we can just kind of get ourselves into a more intelligent place, so that we don't need so many things done all the time. You don't need to do rituals every 5 minutes if you're living your life in a way where it's ritualistically intelligent. You're making some serious movements and inroads towards doing things in an intelligent manner. then it's not as necessary to always be looking at, oh, I need this cleansing ritual or this protection ritual or this or that or that or that. It doesn't become as critical all the time. So I pull back from a little while to just kind of speak about the psychology because, as I said recently, if your mind isn't right, none of this stuff works anyway. If your mind isn't right, then there's going to be a disconnect between your mind and your soul. And that intercessory energy between the mind and the soul is the spirit, but the mind is the gateway to all of these experiences. So if the mind is off, then your passageways are shut down. Your access points will be shut down. So I know a lot of times in our spiritual work, some of us, we hide ourselves within spiritual communities and within the primacy of these different systems, and we do that to hide what we really need to address internally. And of course, if someone starts to speak about the what's needed in terms of of changing our psyche, and sometimes we get a little turned off by that. We get a little turned off. We don't really want to hear that as much. But of course, like I said, I took a time to really deal with that for a little bit, to really deal with the psyche, and developing a stronger hold over the igba, or the igbado, or what we also call the igbado. Sometimes you hear igbado, but igbado is really a shortened form of Igbaoduiwa. That's the full version, but or some will say Igbaodu, but Igbado. And the Igbado is the Calabash, right? So the Calabash is what holds and serves uh, a steward of everything that's in existence. So it represents the full power and the full movement and transmission of the Ifa cosmology in that sense. So um, we have to develop the container. If your container's got leaks and holes in it, then you're going to have a problem. It's not going to hold the information as it should. It's not going to hold the ashe, or again, really support existence as it should. So your entire head, and we learn this through Ifa, we learn this through our Yoruba studies, and of course you learn it, and you can read Carl Jung's work, but you start to learn about the unified field of the conscious mind, and how the conscious mind creates our experiences as we move forward. So in Yoruba, we had the understanding of the Igbado, or again the Calabash, and we used that Calabash, and we developed the Calabash, which was synonymous not only with the universe, but it was also synonymous with your head. You see, they were the same thing. The universe, the head, the Calabash were all the same thing, because it's all in your head at some point. And this is why you will hear me say a lot of times that all of these spirits that you're dealing with and you're talking about are really thought projections. But sometimes when that's said, people think that I'm maybe discrediting or undermining their actual force, and that's not the case at all. What I'm highlighting is the actual force and power of your head, the actual force and power of your thoughts, and the primacy of such. So once you understand that, even when you're initiated as a babalao, you know, you're giving that igbado. If you're not giving the igbado, then you know you may want to go back and check with your initiators. And I have spoken to many people who have told me, "Oh, I'm initiating E5, E5." I say, "Oh, where's your calabash? Huh? What's that? Well, I didn't get that." You know. So again, it's that container of power. It's the container of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and it's the container of the actual cosmology, and and it's something that we possess as an instrument, to get things done. So even without that initiation or the initiatory right into that, even we all have a calabash, we all have a head, we all have that thing that contains all of existence, and we have to develop it and strengthen it and polish it and make sure we have a good one, because it's the thing that's going to sustain and hold up all that we perceive and all that we place within the context of wisdom. So like I said, I took a long time, maybe a year or two, I think by now. But you guys know I'm not that great with time, so it might have been 6 months. But I took some time to really integrate some of the deeper thought that really helps to wield the tremendous power that some of these rituals represent. To really teach you all how to just, in a very basic sense, how to learn to love uh, your thoughts, how to learn to love yourself, and love the entire existence of the ecosystem that you've created around you. How to connect to that, and to see what it is that you need to do in order to, really enjoy it. Really enjoy it. So that's developing that Igbado, or that Igbaiwa, which is again the calabash of existence, or calabash of character, or like I said, Igbaduiwa, which is the, Igba calabash, Odu womb Iwa is character, you know. Um so no, Haru, you can ask your questions. You can put your questions at any time in the chat, man. I know you all think that when I start talking that I have some scripted speech that I'm doing, but I'm not. I'm actually just free flowing right now. So I just saw what you just put in the chat. He said SMH trying to be patient, but questions sparking up. LOL. No, put them in. It doesn't. It's not going to knock off my flow. On Sundays, usually, sometimes I may have something I want to say, but honestly, usually, what I really want to get out only takes me about 15 minutes. Everything before that 15 minutes or after that 15 minutes is really just me adding supporting information to whatever it is that I'm saying. So and especially during the strongs, I keep it really light. So no, you can ask your questions at any point. So don't feel like you're stepping over my speech, because there's no speech. Yeah, there's no speech right now. I'm flowing. I wanted to, you know reflect and meditate on the idea of, just some of the addendum information from Sunday, but there's no pre-programmed path. So man, don't even worry about stepping over it. Now if I'm mid sentence and you ask me to explain what I'm getting ready to say in the middle sentence, yeah, I may say something like, "Hey, man, let me finish the sentence." But yeah, no, never feel shy. That's for anyone listening, anyone in the chat. You can ask questions at any time. Your questions will not always be answered, and mainly because I don't want to answer every question, because sometimes the questions are not good questions. All right, so if it's a question that you're being lazy about, then I won't answer it. If it's a question that it's not a qualified question, then I'll show you where it's not qualified. So sometimes you won't get your question answered, but it's not because I'm trying to do a speech. It's just because that's a part of the learning process. Sometimes me not speaking, the silence that you receive, is an opportunity for you to sit and let what you may have said or what you have asked to reverberate in your own head. Okay. So Brother Ru asked, does that also translate as calabash of destiny as well? No, it doesn't translate as that. No, if you're just speaking about word translation, no, it doesn't. It wouldn't translate as calabash of destiny, because a destination and your primary existence are not necessarily the same thing. What exists determines what your destiny will be. So the thoughts that you have in the now moment will determine what's going to happen next. But the calabash, in essence, contains everything. It's the whole circular aspect. What will be, what has been, and what is now. But Igba Iwa, or the calabash, Iwa, of course, is character. So the calabash of character determines what the actual flavor and character is of your universe. So this gives you an idea that we all are living in a different universe. You know, like I've said many times to you that you are the center of the universe. And I'm not saying that to, give you a nice little meme to say about yourself. The reason I'm saying that is because your existence is centered around the thoughts that you project outside of you. So in essence, the world creates itself around your center point. So you are the or as we call the 0 point, which I think I've broken down before in older shows, if I'm not mistaken. So essentially, when you're dealing with the calabash, you're dealing with all that exists in existence. But like the Igba is the character of what exists. So your universe is not doesn't necessarily hold the same character as my universe. In the same instance, your head or your consciousness is not necessarily the same character as my head or my consciousness. You see, now those things determine your destiny. Your thoughts determine where you're destined to go. Your character determines where you're destined to go. But in terms of your question, does it translate as calabash of destiny? No, not necessarily. No. But you can find the workings in there. It's of course related. Yeah, it's definitely related. But no, that wouldn't be the translation. No. But yeah, so and feel free. Anybody has, if you want to ask another question, he said he had a bunch of questions. If you want to ask another one, or anybody has any more questions, just throw them in there. It doesn't throw the flow off. In fact, I think it enhances the flow sometimes. It's always good. I'm not a talking head type of person, man. So I don't wake up with like, I'm gonna break this down. They need to know this. I'm gonna show them. I'm not really that type. So I really like to hear where the people are at. And sometimes from the quality of question or the quality of statement, it helps me to see who I'm talking to. And, I'm not interested in talking at you, but I want to talk with you. So, never feel shy about that. I know sometimes people don't like to put themselves out in a way where they're letting people know that they don't know as much as they look like they know. Sometimes the image becomes all important. And, I know we live in a society like that where, image, like you say, image is everything. But it's not. It's not everything. Charlumbo says, why is a calabash important as a symbol? Could you explain that question? I want you to explain that question. Okay. So I need some more qualifiers there, brother. He asked why, and I think I know why you're asking or what you're asking, but I want a little bit more background. Okay. So give me a little bit more. So where was that? Nicole says, I don't know too much. LOL. I'm here to take notes and learn. That's cool. That's cool. I mean, you can do that too. There's a lot of people just taking notes and learning too. That's perfectly fine. You know what I mean? I'm not saying, yeah, talk to me. Somebody talk to me. I'm not lonely like that. But definitely I'm saying, don't feel afraid to speak. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't ever feel like, I have a script, and if you ask a question, you're throwing my script off. It's that's not the case. You know what I'm saying? And if you are, the only time I'll ever really check or address your question is if your question reveals something that you shouldn't be doing. Like Tareen this Sunday, when he was asking a question about something I was in the midst of explaining, and I was like, all right, brother, slow up. But it wasn't when I was saying slow up, it's like that's me, just as that's the teacher in me saying, okay, just trying to I wanted to make sure he got all the information, and he may not have realized that what I was saying prior to me saying it was an integral part of the question that he was asking, because he was asking, I want to know about the feminine aspects of the sun, but I was building up to that point. But if I just jumped to that point, you wouldn't have understood why. So, I never just want to spoon feed you anything and say, hey, the sun is hollow and the sun has feminine aspects. That's not really fair in that sense to do something like that. I want you to, most of the time, I don't even want to tell you any of that. I just want to tell you a little bit. And I want you to um, figure the rest out for yourself. 9 times out of 10, to be honest with you. So in that situation, like I said, just ride with me on this journey, and you're gonna see how we're kind of building up to it in that sense. So Brother Mark says, Calabash is a symbol of creation, question mark, or as a container which must be filled, question mark, or is filled full, question mark. Good. Okay. So I'm gonna combine his two questions together. His first question was, why is a calabash important as a symbol? I asked him to clarify it. He said, is a calabash a symbol of creation, or as a container, or like, is it a symbol of a container which must be filled, or is it full? Okay. And then he says, in the Yoruba culture, how does it correlate? All right. I need a qualifier for that last question. All right. In the Yoruba culture, how does it correlate? I don't understand that question. But I'm going to answer the first parts of your question. It's already full because it contains the wholeness of existence as it already stands. Okay. You have to understand that. Remember, there's no sense of time in the spirit world. So let's just take Ori as a Ori as an idea. So you have different forms and different components of the Ori. Like, for instance, you have the Ori Bode, right, which is the outer aspect of the head, which kind of develops later on in a pregnancy. Later on throughout a woman's pregnancy, the Ori Ode comes into being. But you have like the Ori Anyamo, and the Ori Anyamo is an aspect that's of the Ori where it deals with what your gender will be, what your race will be, how you'll look physically, things like that. But you also have, like, for instance, the let's say the Ori Akunlegba. The Ori Akunlegba is the aspects of you that come from heaven, in terms of like the that are given to you by the particular Orisha energies. Like, how much Ogun is he? How much Oshun is she? But like, he might be this much Ogun with this much Eshu and this much Shango, and there's certain fixed values, and then there's certain dynamic values. So, for instance, like I said, the Ori Akunlegba is an aspect of you that is additional to your own character. The Ori Akunleyin, well, no, I think I told you Ayanmo. So you have the Ori Ayanmo, and those are aspects like your race and your gender, which are considered to be fixed values, right? Because you can't really, well, but you can't change your race or your gender. And in the same instance, your family is in that part of your destiny. Can't really change that either, right? So there are certain things, that exist as a part of our existence, that are within that calabash. Now, whether it's a dynamic attribute or it's a static attribute, it's there. It's already there. So, for instance, you have, like I said, the Ori Anyanmo, and that particular aspect. Let's say if you are an orphan, you see, and you come into the world and you have a family that you're unaware of, and you may find out who that family is later, but they were always your family. So that aspect was always in the calabash. You didn't necessarily go and fill it up later, you see. So it's the calabash, or the Igba Odu, or the Igba Iwa, represents all that is in your world. And as you're going through, just like how you open up different chambers of your own mind, as you're going through the world, you're learning. You're learning about who you are as a person. You're learning about the different things that work for you, or the different things that don't work for you. For instance, like we have the Ori Akun Leyan, and the Akun Leyan is the aspect of you that deals with your disposition in life. Like maybe you don't like boisterous people got too much bluster about them. You may not like people who lie. You may have a taboo as it relates to peanuts. Maybe you shouldn't eat peanuts, or maybe going swimming is one of your taboos, or things like that, right? But they already exist in that space, within that calabash of existence. But as we move through life, we're learning about ourselves. We're learning those things that we're extracting, and the things that are important not only to our tradition, but the things that are important to our current, in immediate living, in that sense. You see, so the calabash, as you asked, if is it full or do we have to fill it up? Um, it's full, but it's also expanding. Everything is there because as we perceive what's there, it's just like the more you know, the more questions you have. Well, the more questions that you have, the more the calabash will expand, the more the universe will expand, in that sense, you see? Because remember, the calabash assimilates itself and connects itself to the idea of the universe at the same time. You see, it connects itself to the universe. So we know that the universe is an expanding space. It's an expanding space. There's a pataki in the sacred Odu of Irete D, and I'm not going to tell you the whole thing, but there's a part in it where it says good character, or iwarere. Good character is what allows the rope of life, right? Or what activates the rope of life to remain intact in your hand, or to remain intact in one's hand. I'm translating quickly, but the good character, or good character is what allows the rope of life to remain intact in one's hand. You see, so it's the idea that, of course, a rope is a dynamic um object. It's a dynamic object, but it's also kind of a reference to that chain of life where when you develop your character, all the fullness that chain, because that chain is connected to what? Or rune, or the sun, or transcendence, to the all. So when you have good character, it allows the your particular connection to that chain to remain intact. So you have access to everything. So essentially, in a way, your calabash is always full, because it's always connected to unbounded resources. It's always connected to everything, and you maintain your connection through good character. You see, so as you develop and you work on your character, you start to learn more things about heaven's endowments. I'm using the word heaven to make it clear, but about your other earthly endowments. So you'll learn things like um, about your akun legba, and your akun legba, the things that are given to you, you know, through the heavenly piece. Whereas your akun leyin is more like I said, your taboos. It's the things that you choose, but it's the things that you may learn through divination. You may get a reading and tells you, hey, um, don't do this. This will be dangerous for you. Don't drive a car at night on a Tuesday, or things like that. So yeah, it's actually already, it represents the fullness of things. That calabash, in that sense, it's already full, but at the same time, it expands. Remember, everything is dynamic. Now, your other part of the question, I didn't really understand when you said in the Yoruba culture, how does it correlate? I didn't really get what you were saying there. Uh, Brother Haru says, I know from the linguistic questions I have asked based on the information I have gathered prior to listening and asking you directly that I need better sources for my Yoruba skills. Okay. And then he says, how would such a person as an orphan connect with the spirits of their bloodline family if they never knew about them? because remember, in your calabash is still implanted the memory of the idea of who those people are, because you have you have the onion mo. So the onion mo, it's still within your head. You always know who your family is. You always know who your bloodline is, but you don't know how to invoke that knowing. That's the problem. You see, because you think about it like this, because I get that question a lot. That's, it's a good, oh, it was the second part of his question. I'm sorry. So he said, how would such a person as an orphan connect with the spirits of the bloodline family if they never knew about them, or rather effectively communicate with them? Right. Okay. So, like I said, how many of us really know about our bloodline? If we look at it honestly, how many of us can go beyond our great great grandparents? You see, or maybe great 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 grandparents, and keep in mind, you know, how long we've been on this planet, excuse me. Planets is another topic we'll cover later, but how long we've been on this planet, so the idea there is that you always, peace to you, brother Haru. Yeah, and it was about 7:40 is usually when he's got to head out. So the idea there is that there's always going to be a goon that you don't know about, that you will be required to, or you may want to connect to, right? Because you can only go back but so far. Now, of course, you think about traditionally, the individuals who created and presented this information to us originally, there wasn't so much severing from the bloodline. There wasn't so much of that. So people could say, yeah, my this and that founded this village, or was this, they can kind of go back. But no matter what, I'll give you an example. Just the bones of the sister that was found in Ethiopia, right? And what was that? 74, 1974, right? Those bones were over 3 million years old. Some said 3 point. I know carbon dating is not totally accurate, but some dates placed her around 3.2 million years, and other dates placed her around 3.7 million years. Okay, so at least, let's say if we scratch the 3.2 and the 3.7, we can say at least they're over 1 million years old, at least, right? So when we speak about connecting with our ancestors, are you thinking in terms of millions of years? And we know it goes back even further than that. But that's just an example to use. Are we thinking about millions of years, or are we thinking about 100 or 200 years ago? You see, so no matter what, you're still going to have to invoke that aspect of your calabash that contains that database of that information. You see, and that's why we're our ancestors gave us these different names, and it's different understanding. So yeah, I know it's Lucy, but that's what they call her. But her name wasn't Lucy. You know what I'm saying, brother Achille? But thank you for that. Yeah, but that name actually came from a Beatles song, which was really about LSD, though they denied it. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, LSD, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. That's how they actually ended up naming her, because so they say, because at that time when they were doing the excavation dig in 74, that was a song that they kept playing in the excavation camps. So that's why I didn't say her name, because I don't know her name. I don't know her name. It's almost like, the Venus Hottentot, Sister Sarah Bartman. People think her name was Venus Hottentot, you know. So yeah, but anyway, I don't want to get off into that too much. So yeah, there's still that aspect, of ourselves that we're still going to have to connect to when we want to connect to our Agun, and that's really where we should start. You should always start. That's why in my book, Grasping with the Divine Power, I show you the different components of the Ori. Those are all components to invoke. Like when I say Ori Ipako, you invoke that point. Or like I'm telling you, your Ori Anyanmo. You invoke that. You see? You invoke that part. Say, okay, well, who's in there? Who's down there in in my head. See all of these words that come forth, especially the ones that I share or that you hear others say, they're not wasteful words. In our traditions, we don't talk a lot. So when we do talk, it's purposeful. Okay, is purposeful. So you want to look at every word, and practically every word is an invocation. Like you say Igba, you just say, oh well, that's the Odu, you know. Um, well, the Odu or the Igba is synonymous with the Ori. It depends on where you go. Some places, they'll mainly just say Igba Ori, or they'll just say Igba. Other places they'll say more like Ori. You see, so there's the Igba Ori, which is when you're correlating the universe to the head. Then there's the Igba Iwa, where you're just dealing with the universe in a sense. But either way, the root is the Calabash. So it's like the Calabash, that's the head, the Calabash, that's the universe. You see, those are different invocations that you can pour a libation to. So like you can say, Igba Iwa Tutu, Igba Ori Tutu, Ori Ayanmo Tutu, Ori Akunleyin Tutu. You see, you can actually invoke all these different aspects. Ori Akunlegba Tutu, or Mojuba Akunlegba. I give you honor, Akunlegba, meaning I'm recognizing that you exist. You see, so once I recognize that you exist, it's easier for you to come forth. I'm giving you energy. You see, Mojuba Yanmo, that aspect of me that does not change. The static aspect with me that will be here with me until the day I die. Who my family is, who my gender is, who my race is, my character within my community is a part of the Ayanmo. And you invoke those, and sometimes the invocation is just by saying the words over and over again. I tell you guys that all the time, man. You may not know all of the invocations or prayers for Ochosi, but you know his name. Just keep saying the name over and over again. Ochosi, 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 Ochosi. You can do that. So it's the acknowledgement that brings those energies forth. And I know that was Brother Haru's comment. I'm assuming he'll probably come back later in the archives, because I know he has to go to work at a certain time. Mama Sadaka says it seems similar to why the sun flares. We are constantly right. We are constantly learning and adding to and releasing from it. Right. So you're always going back to that womb or the Igba, because remember, one of the names is Igba Odu, the Calabash of the womb. Igba Odu Iwa. And of course, the shortened form is Igbado. So if you hear people say Igbado, that's what they're saying. They're saying Igba Odu. You know what Odu is. Odu, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of darkness. Igba, Calabash. The Calabash that holds the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of darkness. That almost sounds like the sun. If you think about it almost sounds like Amun. You see. And you may say, well, why is there so many different words to say the same thing in a way, right? Like you have this Igba, you have, and all these different components to the Calabash, which correlates to the head, but then you have the Ori, and it's all these different components of the Ori. Well, you got to understand that when we say Yoruba culture, it's almost like when we speak about Africa. People talk about Africa like it's a country. you know people people like they don't understand that there are different regions. There's countries within what's considered to be Africa or Akibulan. There are different places within that. So even in Yoruba land, there are many different places and many different ways of doing things. For instance, a lot of people don't know that Mami Wata is a part of the Yoruba tradition. You see, they think Mami Wata is something different, but Mami Wata is how we would say Yemonja. You see, or really even Olokun, because Mami Wata is all the water. You see, like Olokun. But in certain places, they don't really say Yemonja as much. They'll say Mami Wata. You see, so there's different ways of doing things in different places and different terminology. And so even when you're in Nigeria, you may be in Yoruba land, you're still looking for and finding the connections between things. Now, of course, you may go someplace and all these terms are used. Like in my tradition and in my lineage, all these terms are acceptable and used because we understand the distinction, the nuances that are present between each of them. You see, so we wouldn't just say, well, the Ori is a container of destiny and the Calabash is like a container of destiny. So it's the same thing. It's not the same thing. It's different. You see, so it goes beyond your cursory understandings. And honestly, a lot of these things you have to learn by being in it and doing it and learning the culture. Go to Nigeria and see how calabashes are used. You see, go look and watch somebody when you know they have the gourds and they're drying out the gourds and they're using them for shekares, or they're using them to carry water, or they're painting them and decorating them, you know, or they're putting food in them. And you start to see the usefulness of all the things that are contained inside of the calabash. You see, all the things that are put inside the calabash, it will help you to understand when they say, oh, the calabash is the holder of all. Because remember, like I told you, our life here, our liberty here is a step down of our liberty in Orun, in the other dimension. It's a step down, you see. So yeah, it's very similar to the sun flare concept. You know, you're always going back to that womb, getting more information, and then things are shooting out. And you know, when you're dealing with those sun flares, remember you're dealing with flares that are thousands of miles high. I just want to give you that idea so you can understand the proportion when we're talking about the sun. You know, we're not talking about like a little candle flicker or anything like that. You know, when you're talking about a something that's shooting out as far as a flare, it's thousands of miles that is shooting out. You see, so just to kind of put that in proportionate, the idea and the power, the dynamic force, and even the potential of the qualities and the natural qualities and the strength of pulling and extracting from the calabash or from the Odu. You know what we can do when we shoot out. You know, when you learn Odu, when you learn Ifa, how far out you can go, how strong and how forceful and how powerful you become as one who can really not only shape your destiny but avoid some of the pitfalls in life. You know, how powerful it is to have that compass, how powerful it is to have that map in life, how far it shoots you out in terms of your understanding, in terms of your power. And I'm not just speaking about Ifa. You know, I'm speaking about, you know, any spiritual tradition that allows you to connect to what we call in our tradition the Enikeji. The Enikeji is like your other part that resides in the room. Enikeji. So that anything that allows you to connect with your other self or your inner self or your higher self. So I'm not just saying Ifa. I mean, there's other powerful and worthy traditions. You know, so just to kind of give you that idea of how powerful it is to go into that dark space. Oh, I'm breaking up. Thank you, Jennifer. I was a little delay. It should be fixed now, but it was a delay. So sometimes you all get a delay on that, but it should be fixed. But okay, thank you everyone for letting me know I'm breaking up. Should be fixed. Yeah, so just the idea, you know, like I said, and if it's clear, just let me know. But the idea there of really having that tradition that pulls you into the dark, and how important it is to go into the dark. You know how important that concept is, to be able to flow in and out of the dark in that way, breaking up. Okay, somebody let me know it's clear, because I think it should be clear by now, but I know you all have a little bit of delay. All right. Let's see. Must be a real long delay. All right, all right, all right. I'm just gonna keep talking. I don't want to say anything of significance until I'm sure that I'm clear. Well, I should be clear by now. Yeah, something must be like a 45-second delay. I think that's what it is. Not clear yet. That's unlike me. I don't know if we would have been clear by now. You know, it's still static. Yeah. All right, let's do it here. I'm clear. I gotta figure out why it keeps doing that. You know, other people don't get static like this. Why is it? Why I get so much static? I gotta figure out why it keeps happening to me. All right. Hopefully that should have cleared. I just did something else that should have cleared it up. But you let me know if it cleared up or not. You know. Clear. Thank you. There we go. There we go. Clear. Yeah, I gotta whenever I get a chance. Thank you everyone. It's flooding in now. Clear, 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 better. Wow. Yeah, there's definitely a delay. I'm getting flooded now with the clears. So yeah, like I was saying, thank you for everybody letting me know. I don't know where I left off before we broke up. See, that's what the static always does. It always kind of, throws me off a little bit. But so yeah, there are different realms of existence. But like I was saying, any tradition that brings you into the dark like that and allows you to connect with that darker and go deep and then come back out, not just keep you in the dark, but come back out, is going to allow for that powerful, dynamic and extension that you have represented in, of course, the solar flare ideology. And thank you again for letting me know I am clear. But tapping into the Ori again, allows you to see what's down in there. When you ask those questions like, well, who's my ancestors? I'm adopted. I get that a lot. A lot of people are adopted. I don't know who my ancestors are. Yes, you do. If you have a head, it's down in there. It's just sometimes maybe you're just making too much noise. You have to learn to be quiet, or again, remember, we all receive different qualities of head. When we look at Ori, Ayanmo, okay, the Anyanmo, it means, even in word, it means, to choose. So the Ori Ayanmo is the part of you that's chosen. You see? Now, if you heard me earlier, I told you, well, or I've said it many times and people don't like it, but it is what it is. You choose the family that you have. Someone said that to me recently about their race. I can't remember who I was talking to, but they were just kind of like, yeah, man, if I could have chosen, this is a melanoid person, if I would have chosen, honestly, would I have chosen to be black? I don't know. Based on all that we go through and everything, maybe I would have chosen to be white. But you did choose to be melanoid. You did choose to be a man. You see? You did choose to have the family that you have. You did choose to have the character or the placement, the role that you have in the world. You chose all of that. We know that because our ancients tell us that you have the Ayan Mo, and that by itself means choice. You choose. You see? So just in knowing that, it causes you to go deeper and quietly more, instead of automatically respond and say, why would I choose that? You would quietly say, why did I choose this? And you would listen for the answer. You would go deeper into the recesses of your own mind, into the deeper recesses of the Calabash, because those things you chose. You see? Aaron Davis says, I thought you said family and gender were preset. Preset by who? It doesn't take it away from what I just said. It's the same thing I said. Family and gender are preset by you because you chose it. You see, those are the fixed aspects of self. You said, I'm going to be this gender, I'm going to be this race, I'm going to have this family, so forth and so on. and what I'm gonna really manifest into the world, even physically. That's something that you chose. So yeah, we're here now. We can't change it. We can't change who our family is. We can't change, I mean, of course, we can change it conceptually. You can have someone who is like a father or a mother or a brother to you, and you see them as that no matter what. Yeah, of course. You have people who go through many lengths to change their gender, hormonal pills, injections, surgery, all kind of things, removal of organs and things like that. But they're not that. That's why they have to do things to maintain it. So you choose those things before you come here. So it's fixed in terms of your human life, as opposed to some of the things that you choose to do once you get here, which are more connected with your character. So Aaron says, but if you're an ancestor to reborn, then you'd automatically come back into the same family next round. No, nope, not at all. Because see, when you're talking about an ancestor reborn, you have to look at it like this. You have the soul. The soul is not connected. You have different realms. The soul is not connected to ancestral realms or anything like that. The soul energy, or even the Ori Inu energy, is a totally different realm. Then you have the ancestral realm. So when you come back to the planet, there's so many different things that get a ride through, right? So it's a partnership. It's a partnership between a soul, or the soul energy, and a particular familial energy. You see, because ultimately we're all connected to the same soul energy. So it's like saying this. It's like saying you got the United States, and I'm living somewhere else. I'm in the Antarctic or something, but I'm somewhere else, and I make consistent trips to the United States. Now, sometimes I may go to Texas, other times I may go to Florida, sometimes I may go to Dakota, other times I may go to Rhode Island, but I'm still within the same United States. I still have the opportunity to present myself into any state within inside of this body of states, or this body of humanity. I can appear, but each time I appear in either state, I take on the residency of that state. So I partner with the state. I go to Rhode Island, I partner with Rhode Island and say, okay, now I'm going to be a Rhode Island resident. Then I go back. Then next time I say, okay, this time I'm going to go to Louisiana. Now I'm going to be a Louisiana resident. You see, I can choose which one, but so there's a partnership between my ancestral self and my soul self. There's a partnership, but they're not the same. You see, that's why you always hear me say things like, when I'm even referring to someone like Bob Marley, I'll say, yeah, the spirit of Bob Marley is here. We still celebrate and enjoy and venerate his spirit, but his soul is elsewhere. We don't know where his soul is. It's doing something else now. It may decide this time to incarnate as a deity, or it may decide this time to incarnate as a mountain, or to incarnate as a cloud. You may incarnate as a cloud just for a few hours. You see? So there's a partnership that goes on between that ancestral realm and that soul realm. It's not fixed that you're always going to come back through the exact same family, but there's a spiritual disposition that will return. There's a spirit of the family that you can, we can almost say, hydrate. You can enliven and animate through soul energy, but ultimately when you get to soul energy, remember, it's characterless and it's formless. So when a soul decides to reflect itself back onto the planet, it reflects itself through different characters and forms as it needs to and as it chooses, based on, again, the Ayan Mo. So I choose, what my character, my reflection will be. I choose that. But one of the things you want to think about is how sometimes we separate ourselves in terms of the supposed human family. And I say supposed because we're not all humans, but how we separate ourselves in that sense. And, we say, well, my family's here, your family's over there, so forth and so on. But ultimately keep in line, there's not that many bloodlines as well. Now, I'm not saying that to necessarily support my statement, but just to give you another way of thinking in that sense. So there's many different things that I can come back to. I am of the firm idea that there are times when our ancestors have come back as other races. Absolutely. I look at certain people, like, for instance, Aleister Crowley. You look at some of these people who have gone back into those tombs, into those traditions at a time, and in the Anglosphere, where melanoid people couldn't get on airplanes, let alone go into a museum or go into a space where they could go into a tomb and things like that. But somebody did it, and someone grabbed that information, whether through thievery or whatever, and archived it. Now, we could say, well, the ancestors orchestrated that. The ancestors put that idea in people's ears to do that. Or maybe that person is an incarnated ancestor. This is why I tell you all the time, what you think is white isn't always white. What you think is black isn't always black. You got to think about the power of the soul. It can do it. It has sovereignty. So it can incarnate wherever it wants to incarnate. And on a lesser level, think about the power of your African ancestors. That's the thing that sometimes I think we lose. It's they're so powerful. They've done so many great things. You don't think they couldn't incarnate as beings who just showed up on the planet 6,000 years ago? We just found out we've been here. We've been here longer than 3 million years, but at least 3 million years. So we're the parent race. You don't think we could have incarnated as something else by now if we so chose to? So yeah, you don't want to lock yourself so much into the automatic, like you automatically come back in the same family next round. No, it's not like that. It's a partnership. So it's almost like an ancestral spirit hitches a ride. You can almost look at it like that, with the star, with the soul that's returning. You see, but that soul or that star says, okay, I'm going to go over there this time. I'm going to go over there that time, and it gives that ancestor an opportunity to come back again, which is one of the reasons why it's so celebrated. You see. So there are different realms of existence. There's a realm of existence where you're making decisions, as a soul body, we'll say, and that's when you're going to, Ajala. Ajala is the one who makes the Oris, essentially, in Orun, and Ajala, he messes stuff up sometimes, because he makes the Ori out of clay, according to our mythology, and sometimes he forgets to bake them the right way, or and they don't withstand. See, the whole idea when we talk about Ajala, when we say, okay, well, sometimes he doesn't bake the clay properly. It's said in our tradition, when the clay isn't baked properly, and the clay is the head, so that's the Ori. When the head isn't cooked properly in his oven, in Ajala's oven, it doesn't withstand the journey of life in a proper way. Or if there's rain that comes in the rainy season, the clay could be washed away, and there's a total loss. You see, so there's an understanding there already that there's a journey before we even get here, before we even manifest in human form. There's already a journey that we go through, and the Ori has to be strong enough to withstand the journey before it even gets to the planet, before it even comes out of a woman's vagina. Before that baby even is formed and comes out of a woman's vagina, there's already a journey that goes on through different realms. So yeah, you're journeying through the ancestral realm, and ancestors say, hey, you're picking this one, saying, all right, come on, come with me. You're coming down again. You're coming with me. Your ancestor, you're traveling through the astral realms where you're saying, okay, this will reach your energy. Okay, I'm going to take a little of this one, some of that one. You're picking all these different things. And the Ori has to be strong enough to come back down with this consciousness intact. If the clay is not cooked and fashioned properly, then when the rain comes, or the deluge of the subconscious, then all of that gets washed away of what the Ori's actual intent and power is. Some children come down very directed and very clear on their objectives. I'm breaking up again. But all right, let me fix it. 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 right, that should be better. That should be better. Let me know if that's better. It's just in rare form today. The breaking up is in full effect today. It should be better now, though. Clear. All right, cool. So thank you, everyone. Thank you. So yeah, there's a journey. Thank you. There's a journey that occurs. Thank you. Before we even reach the Earth's surface, where we experience that esentaye, or the esentaye. Well, really, it's a a ceremony. But before our feet even touch the earth, there's a journey that we go through. You see, and the ori has to be strong enough to take that journey and to pick the things and the tools that we need for this leg of the journey. Just like when we're here now, you're here listening to me right now. Why? Because you're preparing yourself for the afterlife. And in the afterlife, if your consciousness is not kept intact, you may forget this part of the journey. You see, you might not even remember that you were here. You see, so there's different levels and different rings that we're going through. And the whole key is to, if we have a good ori, if we fixed a good ori from Ajala, then our consciousness can stay intact. If the ori that we picked was not a good one, then we develop it. You see, we develop it through our character building. And then we almost refashion an ori that wasn't cooked right. It's like putting some food back in the oven or re-seasoning it. It wasn't right. So that way, when we go to the next place, we'll maintain, our consciousness. You see, so no, it's not as automatic as you may imagine. In response to that question, Keely says, Chief, since our talk about does white people have souls, a few days later, some white people came through in a dream on my mother's side of the family. I was like, wow. Yep. Because again, we're using color coding. White. That's color coding. You see what I'm saying? And it's such an immature idea if you really think about it. If a person looks a certain way, we now start to make all kind of determinations about their soul. That's yeah, I don't want to say that, but people have done that to us at one point as melanoid people. Certain determinations made because of the way we look. Now, are we different than Caucasians internally? Absolutely, we're different. We're different on the outside. We are different on the inside. There's no question about that. We don't have to figure that one out. There's no question about that. Is their psychological makeup different than our psychological makeup? Absolutely. Is their spiritual makeup different than our spiritual makeup? Absolutely. Is their soul makeup different than our soul makeup? Who knows? We don't even know what our soul is comprised of, let alone to be passing judgment on someone else's. You see? So you end up losing out and missing the abundance of what life actually is because you take on some of the ideologies from a low IQ culture. It's very easy to stand in front of people and say, because we're hurt and sometimes we have extreme reactions. And those reactions are not always the most intelligent. So we just start making up stuff, or sometimes we start to dive within the pools of pseudoscience. Like I think I shared that once, brother I was talking to years ago was telling me about how people who eat swine, they begin to act like pigs. And I was like, what do you mean? It's Muslim, brother. And he was like, yeah, think about it. And he was saying, think about it, brother. Think about it. He was like, they start to act hoggish from eating that hog. They start to act hoggish. And he was dead set on his theorem. If you eat the swine, you eat the hog, you start acting hoggish, whatever that word means. You see? So I just had to say, oh, okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying, brother. I see what you're saying. So sometimes we apply a lot of pseudoscience without really learning what is. Even when we start to talk about DNA and genetics, It's kind of sad, man, because sometimes I see, and just because you on the street doesn't mean that you can't, you know, you don't doesn't mean that you're not going to know something. You know, like some people are called street lawyers or street chemists. Doesn't mean that you don't know about law or chemistry just because you're on the street. But sometimes we don't utilize the resources that are right in front of us, man. You know, we're still speaking about 8th grade science. You know, we don't really have real books, real science books, real biology books. I mean, real ones. You know, not the ones that you get in school. You know, to really learn what it is that we're talking about. So even when we say white people, you know, where did that come from? We don't want to be called black. If you think about it, we don't want to be. Most of us don't want to be called black. We don't want to be color coded like that. You know, we're identifying with a spiritual disposition or even a geographical disposition. Even that, we'll identify with that. But to just say I'm black, what is that? What does it really say? So look at it, you know, on the other side, just to say somebody's white. So are all white people the same? Now, of course, you'll have many quote unquote revolutionaries say, yeah, all white people the same. You know, you hear me. I wrote about it in my book, Grasping of Divine Power. And I said, you know, no matter where you go, the European acylic has the same imperative, which is true. But so does the African acylic. It has the same imperative. So you may have different ethnic groups across the continent, but you have one culture. You may have different ethnic groups across Europe, but there's one culture. There's one imperative. You see? So sometimes it just takes a little bit of study, and you start to realize too, man, you know, you got to go beyond the white black motif, because that will keep you really confused as to who's who. You know, this is why KRS-One had to come out with songs like Black Cop. You know, so you could really see, but just because a person is black, quote unquote, doesn't mean that they're down with you. You know, like I said, I don't give a damn. I mean, you cop, man, you giving an order to do something that violates my rights, you're gonna do it just like anybody else. Forget all that, hey brother. No, I mean, you ain't gonna disarm me with that, you know. But so yeah, we got to get out of the black and white motif in terms of, or black, white, yellow, red, you know, all the different colors that we use to determine who the people of the world are. Color coding is very base level. It's very base level, because you may say, well, the China man is the yellow man. Well, what about, you know, places like Cambodia, where you have melanoid Asians? I mean, hell, heck, excuse my language. Just look at the name, Cam. Anywhere you see that Cam or that Kim, you know you're dealing with something black. Just like Camelot, King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. Well, what is the knights? Those were the Moors. You see, that's why the K is silent, because the K represents hidden knowledge. You know, so we could look at King Arthur, Knights of the Round Table, Camelot, and say that's white people stuff. No, if you read the story, you'll figure out it's black people stuff or melanoid people stuff. You see, so the color coding is always going to confuse you every time, man. It's going to, you read about the Shang dynasty. It was a Shango dynasty. They worship Shango. First dynasties in China were melanoid people sitting on the throne. You know, Brother Mark says, does food taboos and Ifa readings affect one's health negatively if one consumes the tabooed food? I'm going to read that question again. Does food taboos and Ifa readings affect one's health negatively if one consumes a tabooed food? And Brother Mark, I'm not going to answer that question. You've been asking some very on-point questions since you started joining in on these segments. So I have a pretty good leader at this point. Okay, so you're breaking up again. I'm going to do it, man. What are you trying to do here, YouTube? I don't know why this is happening so much. That's all right. We can ready to get off anyway. Yeah, you're not getting them 2-3 hours every day anymore. But hopefully that cleared up. I know there's a delay, so you just let me know if you can hear me. Let me know. Let me know. Let me know. Thank you, Sister Nicole and Diana and Aaron and everyone else has let me know. Thank you. So, yeah, man, I'm not answering that question, Brother Mark. You already know the answer to that question. And I'll repeat it for those who I may have been breaking up. Brother Mark asked, does food taboos and Ifa readings affect one's health negatively if one consumes the tabooed food? You asked better questions than that. So I already know you know, so I'm not answering that. All right. Um told you I don't answer everything. Some things I let you digest. You work on that. You think about that one. Okay. And then he said, I mentioned that question because you spoke of food taboos. Uh-huh. You still gonna get the same answer. Nope. You can answer that for yourself. You can answer that for yourself. Because all we have to do is this. Like this is why I don't answer certain questions. Does food taboo affect one's health negatively if one consumes a taboo food? Well, what is health? Right? Because you have your spiritual health, your mental health, your emotional health, excuse me, financial health. You get what I'm saying? That's why I'm not going to answer that question. And just in me saying what I just said just now, that should already give you your answer. Just in what I just said, I shouldn't have to say anything else beyond that. You know, strong mind, strong body, fitness, the mistress of memes. You got to get on strong mind, strong bodies, fitness, Instagram. A lot of inspiration there for men and women. A lot of inspiration. Yeah. But she says, Chief, if some children come through with a clear understanding of their purpose, is it because they have memories from a past life? Absolutely. Yep, that's exactly what it is. But look at it this. Look at it but this. Wow. Look at it but this though. but look at it like this. Look at it like this. What is a past life other than where you just were yesterday? You see, so don't always look at don't look at this like this is the only life, because life expresses itself in many different forms. You see, so life expresses itself through spirit, life expresses itself through material, life expresses itself through ether. So when we say a past life, it doesn't always mean when they were on the earth before. You see, a past life would be, when you were a thought. When your mother was walking down the street and your father saw her and was like, damn, look at them thighs on her. Look at them breasts. That would be considered a life. When you were in a room and you were picking what your destiny was to be, you were picking who your family and these things would be. That was a life. When you were going through the sacred grove, that was a life, which we call the Iba. When you were going through that grove, that was a life. So that's the key that I was saying. When you pick a good ori, and it's big properly, I'm breaking up again. No, I can't be breaking up again. Not this soon. I just came off of a breakup. I'm thinking maybe Louisa and Lo, you guys might be on delay. I'm thinking that's what it is. I can't be breaking up again. Usually it takes at least 15, 20 minutes or even longer for me to break up again. I think y'all are on a delay. The delay track, I think. If not, then feel free to correct me. So yeah, it's bad. Wait a minute. I think y'all need to refresh your browsers. Somebody tell me if I'm breaking up right now. Somebody, anybody. Anybody. Lambo says I'm breaking up. I think y'all are delayed. I think that's what it is. Let me see. I won't say too much. Nah, you're breaking up. Nah. I Okay. I don't know what's going on. I gotta figure this out. Oh, I know what I could do. Hold on a second. There we go. Okay. All clear. All right. It should be clear. I done pressed every button I have. Um, but okay. Yeah, I gotta figure that out. I don't know why that's happening. It's very interesting because it doesn't happen anywhere, anytime else. Um, but yeah, so past life can be considered, like I said yesterday, man, or maybe in your earlier life, you could have been a child working in a sweatshop. That could have been your life, and some things about our past we forget. I was thinking about that yesterday. I was talking to a brother who had gone through some real hard things in his life, and I remember when I was young, I was in an environment once, many, many years ago in a football camp. And one of the counselors of the camp was molesting the children. Now, this was so long ago, I only can remember the guy's face. I can't remember his name. And I didn't even I didn't even know what it was until I was an adult. By then it was too late. But he used to come into the dorm room, the room that I shared with another kid, another young man at night, and he would molest him, right? And just yesterday I was thinking, I mean, this we going back a lot of years now. A lot of years, right? And I'm thinking about this and I'm saying, now it's already a tragedy. And it was interesting. Recently I found a piece of paperwork from that actual camp. So I have the ad because I didn't remember the address. It was so long ago. My family had sent me there when I was very young, um, and so, but I found the address and I'm like, man, that camp probably been closed down now for. Tavon says I'm breaking up. Okay, am I breaking up or okay? I'm clear now. Okay, yeah, I think there was a little delay there, but anyway, they sent me there so long ago. I know that can't be there no more. I mean, he might be in jail. Who knows by now? But anyway, I was thinking about it, and I didn't even know what molestation was. You know what I mean? To know that he was doing something wrong. I remember my roommate was like, he comes in here at night, he lays in the bed with me and plays with my DICK. Right. So I'm like, what? I'm a little child. I didn't know. I'm like, ew. That's it. you know. But yesterday I was talking to a brother who had been through something like that. And I'm thinking back to myself and I'm rewinding to that time. Well, my roommate at the time, it was this Caucasian kid, and the counselor was Caucasian. And that's why I remember him just having this beard, this blonde beard, and I had gotten sick while we were at camp. I remember that I had gotten the flu. And he used to always get on me about going to go lay back down, get back in that room because I'd want to be back out in, at training camp. And I'm rewinding and I'm thinking and I'm thinking, I'm saying he didn't touch me. Now, was it because I was melanoid? Maybe maybe he didn't like dark meat, or was it because I was sick? And I'm saying, man, maybe because I was sick. He was like, I don't want to catch no cold from this little, Negro. But the point I'm saying is that sometimes there are things from a life before that we forget, that we block out. You see, so there are transitions in lives that we might go. So, and when I said it to say, I had to sit here and think about last night. I'm really like, I was really thinking to make sure he didn't touch me, because I'm like, nah, he never touched me in any kind of inappropriate way. But I was like really searching my mind to make sure I wasn't blocking anything. So I had to really go through and recall and remember. And I'm like, okay, from each day being at that camp, I'm like, nope, he never came at me like that. So what I'm saying is that let's say if he did and I blocked it out, that would be something from a quote unquote previous life that I blocked out or that I forgot. You see, so when we speak about life, it's not always living on earth, dying, coming back to another life again. There are so many transitions and transformations that we go through, you know, um, through this journey overall. There are so many transitions that we go through. You see, like that was a transition, and that was at a time where I didn't even know what the heck a molestation or a pedophile was. So I'm just thinking, I wasn't thinking anything really. I didn't even think about it because I'm like, oh well, Now, yeah, if he would have gotten in bed with me and touched, I would have known. No, don't, no. Mm-mm. You know what I mean? Like we would have had a problem, or at the very least, I would have called my mother or my father, and I would end up saying something which would have got him, I'm sure, killed by my father. You know. So your life, in terms of new lives or old lives, it's now. It's right now. You start a new life today. And there's things from your past life that you may retain in terms of value, and there's some excesses that you slip away. And then it may be something I'm breaking them again. I think what y'all did, I don't believe we are breaking up again. I think what y'all did is y'all got together offline or maybe on Facebook, and you said this Monday we're gonna prank him and we're gonna tell him that he keeps breaking up. There's no way I can be breaking up this much. I've never broken up this much on this show. It's been like every 10 minutes at this point. I'm not buying it. Y'all are messing with me. I'm not breaking up this much. Anyway, let me go out to another comment. So Strong Mind says, in a previous segment, you described the falling of our soul through the planets, right? And picking up various traits needed before coming into this life. Does that also correlate with the Ori may not have been prepared long enough? Okay, falling through worlds is going through different lives. Right now, you fell to Earth and you're rising up through Earth. So this is Aaron, you're right. Aaron Davis has been a lot of static. Yeah, I don't know what that's about. Usually it's not like this. The static will come once in a show. But this has been like every 10, 15 minutes. I'm going to get ready to get off base on that. And I didn't even talk about what I was going to talk about today. I wanted to actually, I was going to talk about candle magic. Just to give you an idea of how the ride goes sometimes. Because we were talking about the sun yesterday. So I was going to give you all some firework to do. And I was going to talk about colors and candles. That's why I started off talking about the sun a little bit in the segment. But the questions led us somewhere else, which in my opinion is a better place anyway. But just to give you an idea, this is how the ride goes. You go for the ride. I'm going for the ride too. We're both going for the ride. But yeah, so you're falling through Earth right now. In that sense, you're falling through this planet, and you're picking up some things. You're getting rid of some things. There's some things that are in your family line that you're fixing. Like some of you may not have had a lot of conscious people in your family line, or don't really have a history of that. So you're breaking those cycles in that legacy in this time right now. You dig? So it's the same thing with the idea. The Igbadu of YouTube can't expand fast enough. Yeah, possibly, brother. But yeah. So this is an experience, because just like you're falling through planets, well, you're on a planet, right? So if we look at it for a second, right? Third planet from the sun, ruled by the number 3. I gave you that breakdown shows ago already, but let's say we're pushing up through the planets. Let's just say, for instance, right? Then you would recognize in this time and in this existence, the things that you're learning and the things that you're discovering in terms of just kind of trotting or transforming through this life existence. Those things are a part of the journey of the Ori still. You see, they're still a part of the journey of the Ori. So, like I said, we may be on the Earth, but, next stop, we may go somewhere else. We may go to Jupiter, and then we may go to Mercury. And then, because if you think about it, or really Venus and then Mercury, because if you think about it, we speak about in our tradition, that we go to Arun. When we are out of this space, right? We would go to Arun. So Arun is also another word for the sun. And you heard me speak about yesterday that I'm telling you, our moon is there. The return of the source of the womb is there. That's why we celebrate the solstice. That's what I was speaking about. It's not just about rising in our greatness because the sun is at its highest place and all that. It's about returning to our greatness. So let's just say, what if we did, if you're looking at the order of the planets, coming out of the sun, it would be, of course, the sun, Mercury, of course, then Venus, then of course Earth, Mars, then Jupiter, Saturn, or Anu or Uranus, Neptune, and then it would be Pluto if we're counting Pluto in there, right? So let's just say if the third leg of your soul journey ends you up on Earth, right? And let's say in the next incarnation you go to Venus, if you pass the Earth test. Now this is all theory I'm giving you. This is theory, but it's there's some soundness to the theory. And I'm answering your question, strong mind, strong body fitness, about falling through the planets. Let's just say if your fall was from Pluto to Neptune to Uranus to Saturn to Jupiter to Mars, and now you're on Earth, then your next fall will be Venus, then Mercury, and then the Sun, and then to Amun, or the hidden sun. You see? Then the same theory would still hold in terms of falling through the planets and gathering certain qualities as we go through. You see? So Diana Williams says, I have a fear of boats and always wondered why. I wonder if I was on the Titanic. Maybe, possibly. You might have or you could say it could have been a Titanic. I don't want to take that away from you because that's possible. It could have also been that you have a fear of not being stable. Not being founded, not being grounded. Because maybe that's one of your taboos. We all have taboos, man. We all have things that we struggle with that others don't. Some of us just have certain challenges. For a long time, I practiced celibacy, right? People were like, man, how do you, or abstinence. Let me say I was practicing abstinence. And people were like, man, how do you do that, man? How you go so long without? Well, that's not really hard for me. That was never really my challenge. Women like that's easy. I can go without sex. There's other things that I have to stay away from. I'm not going to share those things with you, but there's other things that will cause triggers and domino effects and landslides in my life that other people could be around and be like, I don't even see what you see. Like, I don't see the problem here. But we all have our different things. I have another friend, he can't be around any type of drugs. He was an addict. Any type of, I'm talking about cigarettes, anything that's addictive. No sugar, no nothing. Well, actually, no, he just finished battling sugar addictions, which is stronger than the sugar is stronger than the drugs anyway. And most of the time more damaging. But so we all have our particular taboos that we have to learn to respect in that sense and walk through and walk around. And as we go through this life, those taboos and all those things that we're learning are things that we're learning to realign our karma. Okay, let's see. Sister Kia says, can we have soul if we cannot tolerate the sun? Can we have soul if we can't tolerate the sun? Yes, absolutely. I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. But keep in mind that the sun that you're experiencing, the solar radiation that you're experiencing from the sun is not the actual sun. It's the after effect of the electromagnetic exchange of the sun with our moon, or with its dark hole. You see. So we look at that bright sun and we think it's we say, oh, we're the sun people. We're the people of the sun. We get overly excited about the sun. We don't get that excited about the moon. And the truth is, we're more moon people. We're the night people. We're, or as they call us, the Negroes, the blackness, the darkness. We move in darkness. We move in that dark melanin. We move in the unseen, not the seen. So, yeah, you absolutely can have a soul and not be able to handle the sun. I know I have students like that, and I knew who have trouble, because I love sun. I love heat and I love the sun. I could be out in 120-degree weather. I'm cool with it, and I don't need shade. I don't mind being in the sun. But some people are not like that. Some people have to always be in the shade or they'll pass out. So but they're doing the work. It's just we all have different dispositions in that sense. You don't want to look at the physical to necessarily give you an idea of the soulful. You can look at the physical to get clues on the spirit. Absolutely. You can look at the physical and get clues about a person's spirit, but the soul is a little bit more trickier than that. And keep in mind too, all that sun too is not even really healthy for your pineal. It dries it out. The pineal is active at night. So too much sun can be problematic, and we all have our different degrees that we can take. Give me all I can take. I love sun, but everybody's different. And in that sense, we all can withstand different degrees of light. In that sense, we all have different tolerances to it. See, Strong Mind, Strong Body Fitness says, I had a dream months ago that I died with my family in a car wreck, and we drowned in a body of water. I saw that I was a small Caucasian girl. It was very eye opening to my fear of water. That means you didn't die. You just went somewhere else. Because how are you gonna have a dream about you dying? Who was observing? Who was watching? So yeah, it wasn't a death like you think it was a death. It might have been the suppression of the Caucasian inside of you, or those Caucasian or Western values that are inside of you being suppressed in that sense. And like you said, you died with your family, right? So is your family still in tune and aligned with Western values? You see, because you observed it, so therefore we know. I don't think that was a past life dream. It could have been. I'm not trying to take that away from you. Might have been, but might have been something else. Gina Lacey, quiet genius. She says, I was a quiet, humble, passive toddler at 4 years old. My little sister was a ball of fire, talkative and outgoing. I believe this is why my uncle chose to molest me for 5 years instead of her. Yeah, possibly. A lot of times or he might have already done something to you before when you were 4, but you don't remember it. A lot of times quiet children, or like we say shy children, I always tell you shyness is a result of emotional damage. We think shy like it's cute. There was even a song out back in the day. He's so shy. Doom 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 doo doo doo. I don't remember who sung that, a little corny song, but a shy person is a damaged person. So there's a difference between being shy and being reserved. Some children are reserved, but a lot of times when you have children who are quiet is because they've been quieted. Something happened to them that Scarface into that. Low as a cloud. He said Scarface did that song. No, it wasn't Scarface, brother. I think it was like Denise Williams or something. But but yeah, man. So yeah, he could have chose to molest you, because of that, or it could have been something else. We all go through our process. You've been accosted by men more than once. Males. I don't say men because men wouldn't do that. But you've been accosted by a male more than once. So what is it in your journey that you're pulling in, and what are the lessons that you need to learn? What are the lessons early on that you asked to learn, despite the pain? I know people are going to say, so you mean to tell me a 4-year-old child would ask for that lesson? No. But remember, we existed on planes before you were a 4-year-old child. So when you were 4, you weren't just 4. You might have been like 600 or 1,000 years old by then. There's different lessons in each space, So I would look at that, the fact that you've been accosted. I remember you shared some of your story, but the fact that you've been accosted more than once, what does that mean? Or what does that mean about your surrounding environment? The nasty, deviant uncles like that, you know, sometimes our parents turn a blind eye, you know, or they make certain excuses and things like that. So they put their children in very toxic environments. That's something to take a look at. Your environment. What do I need to learn about my environment? You know, it's my have I always incarnated into these unhealthy environments, or am I not proactive about cleaning my environment? You know, things like that. You know, um, those are the things you want to look at, but not just I was quiet, so he did it to me, didn't do it to her. I mean, because then you'll say, well, because of that, I learned to speak up and talk more. But maybe that wasn't really your nature. You know, like I said, you could have been quieted, or you could have just been a reserved child, and he took advantage of that. You know, or it could have been a lot of other things. Maybe you had to learn a sense of ownership. You know, because a 4-year-old child can say, "Don't do that. I don't like that." 4-year-old child can be taught to say that if parents proactively teach them things like that. You know, I used to have to teach my youth that, man. My youth always had locks, or still do, but for the most part. But you know, people come up, and plus, I make some really gorgeous children. So people always pointer scissors. Thank you, Sister Akia. So people would always come up, oh my goodness, so handsome, or oh, she's so beautiful. She did, and then be touching them, and man, get off. What are you doing? You know, so I had to teach, especially the girls, to pull away. No, don't just let people touch you when they feel it. Yeah, you're fine. Yeah, of course you're fine. You know, you're gorgeous. You're beautiful. You know, and you're not supposed to be touched because you're a deity. That's what I used to always tell them. You're a deity. And deities can't be touched all the time, because if they get touched all the time, then that means people don't think they're deities, and you're a deity. You can't touch God whenever you feel like it. You can't touch a deity whenever you feel like it. And tell them stuff like that. Put that in their head. And they would say it out loud. No, you know, I can't be touched all the time. So, you know, sometimes you got to look, there's so many different factors that go into the things that happen to us, you know, in that sense, and the lessons that we are being called to learn and look at. Like I said, with you, Sister Jean, has happened more than once. So that's something to look at, you know. What is it? And I'm not blaming you, you know. I'm not, trust me, I'm not blaming it. I'm not into that blame the victim mentality crap. You know, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying sometimes we have to look at it with a sober mind, you know, and really look at it and say, okay, well, what was really going on here? You know, what was I introducing myself to, or being introduced to, you know, in order for my own growth and my own expansion. And I know that's a hard one. That's, you know, there's a lot of anger that people feel around that, especially when you can say something like what I just said with sobriety, because it makes me sound like I'm cold. But, you know, sometimes you got to be a little cold to help people. You can't respond and react all the time and get right in the middle of it. Sister Kia says, I was shy to meet new people growing up. My parents were too. Well, think about this. You came to the planet to meet people. So there was damage that was passed on to you. There was a damaged way of thinking that was passed on to you. Now, listen, I understand. I was a shy child. Didn't speak. Literally, did not speak. You know, and I'm antisocial today. All of that is abnormal. I'm not supposed to be antisocial. I wasn't supposed to be shy. You see. So, and people don't believe it until they spend time around me. Oh, you really are. You know, but because when you learn to work with the Orisha, you pull on what you need for what you need to do. And then once that's over, like when the show was off and I say, all right, folks, I go into another zone, you know, but all of that's wrong. That's the broken parts of us that need to be corrected and fixed. It's the broken parts, you know. So sometimes we look at it and we date back so young. We say, well, I was like this since I was 2 or since I was 3. And we don't realize there's so many aspects of our life, man. You know, what about when you were in the womb? What was going on then? When you were a twinkle in your father's eye, what intentions did he have towards your mother? What kind of self-shape or identification of self-shape that your mother have about herself. You know, there's so many different things that you can look at and say, man, there were a lot of constituents that went into my making before I even came out of the womb, which would explain some of my disposition now. You see, Lo said, I played myself. I don't need people to have fun. Well, you don't. You know, I mean, you don't really need people, you know, but we come here to enjoy the variation, the different characters, and the corruption that comes through interacting with other people, you know, and maybe just one person. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be a bunch of different people. You know, I enjoy my own mind, to be honest. I could sit on a park bench somewhere and just meander through my own perverted, now I'm playing, well, meander through my own thoughts, through my own imagination. So, but everyone's different in that sense, but definitely there's supposed to be interaction. That's why we're here. You know, no man is an island, you know, as Dennis Brown would say. So Gina Lacey, excuse me, Gina Lacey says, I was called dumb because I didn't talk from the trauma of being taken from my grandparents at 2. There we go. Moved from the country to the city. I was so naive. There we go. You see? So that's 2 years old. You're talking about being molested at 4. But at 2, we already know that you were in a toxic environment. Somebody called you dumb because you didn't talk. And you had the trauma of being taken from your grandparents at 2. So that we already know something was wrong. Moved from the country to the city. Something was wrong. You see? Because you felt that trauma back then. So you see how much cognizance that a child has. You know, you see how much trauma and cognizance that a child can experience at 2 years old. You see, you were taken from your grandparents and felt the trauma of it. So you were called dumb. So who the heck would call a child dumb for that? Who would not notice the effect that it would have on a child? Who would not, you know, think that over and say, maybe we shouldn't do this? Already gives you an idea. So you were probably gestating and being reared inside of a pit of toxic material. And then you had this toxic, perverted a-hole of an uncle. You know. Hopefully he's dead now. You know. But let's see. So she says, designs not defined, says, can a 2-year-old be naive? Mm-hmm. Right. Of course, 2-year-olds are naive. That's why they need to be protected. You know, a 4-year-old needs to be protected. You know, we there's naiveties in so many different areas of our lives. You know, I've seen 50-year-old people I've taken back to the continent, and they were naive. When somebody embraced them and said, "Hey, my brother, my sister," they really think they mean it. I'm saying, man, keep your purse, clamp down on your purse. That's game. You know, so, but because I was able to protect them in that way, you know, so we all need some measure of protection and covering and sheltering at different ages or different points of our life. Ambitious Vegan says, so contradicting, LOL. We need each other, then we don't need each other. Trauma is trauma, unhealed or not. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not about needing each other. It's about the advantage. We came to the light. We came to the world to be with each other. See, that's the key. Not necessarily came here to need. I know I did a show title before, We Need One Another, but that was just because I was just giving a nice show title. But you've heard me say many times, I don't need anyone. Men are supposed to be independent phenomenons. We can't need anyone, or we lose our value as men. But no, you don't necessarily need, just like you can develop and grow on an island by yourself, on a deserted island, but it would take you a very long time. Very long time, you know, but yeah. So it's not contradiction with your fresh mouth. Anyway, good morning, Latanya Grant. Lotus Scholar says, my aunt who died before I was born, I used to see when I was a child. The problem is I don't know what she looks like. She ain't seen a picture, And she has a living twin I ain't seen. But as a kid, I knew her. Yeah, you got the gift. Well, you said I used to see when I was a child. Well, you got the twin. That's the picture. Kia says, I was traumatized when I moved from in the alley to up the hill, from a juke joint area to a new home. A lot of times that traumatization that we put children through, man, we totally ignore it. Oh, they'll be all right. We split up families like it ain't nothing. Jostle them from room to room like it ain't nothing. And children really do need stability. They need steadiness. And that's one of the dangers too when you put them in public school. Every 9 months they get a new teacher. Every 9 months they have a new adult in their face. That's why when they're in kindergarten, sometimes they slip up and call the teacher mommy. You ever notice that? They'll say mommy by mistake. They develop those attachments to their mothers, of course. And then in another 9 months, you got another teacher. In another 9 months, you got another one. Another 9 months, you got another one. And then you get a variety of teachers. You got a gym teacher, a health teacher, this one. You're in this building with all these different adults who ain't really showing you no real love. That's traumatizing by itself. That sends children into shells by itself. Strong Mind Business says, Chief did a segment on resentment and forgiving, really helped me with certain things that happened to us. Yeah. That's if you need to forgive, Gina. I'd say you probably need to still work on your processing a little bit more. You still need to work on your processing probably a little bit more, before you make a decision if you want to forgive. That's something you want to do. If you choose to say, I'm not saying you're bitter, but let's say if you chose to be bitter, that's your right and your choice, because bitter just means to bite. Remember, I did a show on bitterness. Biting means I'm splitting from this. I don't want to be with it. You may choose to say, I don't want to be around my family anymore. There's nothing wrong with that decision. So, I mean, someone like your uncle, man, is supposed to be impaled, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know him, and he may be the sweetest man, and all. He's supposed to be impaled. We're supposed to take a sharp iron rod and stick it up through his anus, out through the top of his skull, and hang him out, and put a sign across over his neck that says, sexual deviant. That's me. And I mean that in all seriousness. He should be impaled. Now, should I forgive him? I do forgive him. Forgive him means to give love, right? So love is just really implanting your consciousness somewhere and doing what the divine would do. The divine removes toxins and sicknesses from the environment. So I think your uncle needs to be sterilized from the planet, and anyone like him, male or female alike. They need to all be impaled, man. Needs to be like Impale Alley, where you just run down this whole long strip. We could drag race up and down the strip, and you look up and it just be all these iron rods with impaled bodies. That's me. If I had it my way, that's how I would do it. It's easy. Make it real simple. You can still forgive him if you want, but he'd be hanging up there on that iron pipe. Kia says, in the alley, I played all the time into the night. Playing in the alley. That's hardcore. That's some Skid Row stuff. That's hardcore. Brother Child Lambo said, I couldn't speak until I was 5 years old, and I had a strange dream. Before that time, I wanted to speak, but I would only grunt words. See all the stuff that comes out when y'all communicate with each other? So going back to little smart mouth, ambitious vegan, you see the value of being around each other. It's not really the need, but you see what just happened, just that little bit of opening up with each other. You start to share your stories with each other, and you realize, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. Well, that's cool. Gina says, I'm not bitter. I'm healing. I did forgive him. All right. Well, that's cool. He should still be impaled, though. I think anyone who molests a child's innocence needs to be taken out. Anyone, and in any way you molest the innocence, it's not always sexual, man. It's not always sexual. Sometimes you have parents who manipulate their children or use them to get back at other parents by exposing them to things that they shouldn't be exposed to, by telling them things that shouldn't be told to them. Or you have those parents. The new cool thing is to poison the minds of a child against another parent. To me, that's also a form of molestation because you're destroying the natural bonds that child is supposed to have with that parent just because you have an issue with that parent. You know, sometimes people like to step into the dominant role and say, well, I know more than that other parent. No, you don't. Regardless of what, if you think your culture is better or you into Orisha now, whatever, you don't know more than the other parent. So that's all different forms of molestation. When you're purposely perverting and distorting a child's natural growth path, man, bring out them iron pikes. That's what I'm on. Bring out them iron pikes, man. Let's get this over with. Come on, man. See, now that the mail's starting, I'm getting ready to get out of here anyway. But because I might start really getting barbaric. Marva says, as a child, 11 years old, see more children stuff. I got so angry with molestation that I used a bread knife and slashed my stepfather's belly. Nice. See, that's what I'm talking. I knew I liked you, Marva. I like you. Slash my stepfather's belly. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. 11 years old. Now I know everyone doesn't have the wherewithal to fight back, but you know, one of them ancestors raised up in her and said, all right, this is what you're gonna do. This is what you're gonna do. You know, yeah, man. You know, I mean, shout out to all of those who were able to fight back. A lot of times we're so terrified, you know, of adults, and especially when they approach you with situations that completely shock your spirit, that we kind of go dead inside for a moment while they're doing whatever it is that they're doing. You know, I've even experienced that as an older man, you know, in my 20s, being exposed to certain things that were so unnatural that I kind of just froze, just didn't know what to do. You know, and not to say that I let anybody do anything to me, but sometimes it's just a freezing by itself. You know, you see things you just shouldn't see. It's like the first time maybe you look at social media, you know, you seeing all of these black men being killed. You're seeing a gun fired. You know, that's not something that you're supposed to ever see. Yeah, see, I just lost my picture here, but it's okay. That's not something that you're ever supposed to witness. You see, so that's an example, man. Sometimes we are exposed to things that a person is never ever supposed to be exposed to. I often think about that when I think about the Ma'afa, and you think about all of those brothers and sisters. Yeah, okay, here we go. I don't know why that happened. The picture went. YouTube is really bugging out today. Oh, it still ain't working. All right, whatever. I'm not going to get off into that. But anyway, you look at the Ma'afa and you look at so many different situations where brothers and sisters were treated in a way that was so beyond, you know, their culture. You get put onto a ship, and now you have another man raping you. You know, not just the women. I mean, and I'm not discounting what happened to the women. Trust me, I'm not. But they're raping little boys. They're raping grown men. They're raping little girls. They're raping grown women. You know, everybody gets raped. You see, and you grow up in a culture where you're just looking at that like, huh? Imagine what that did to the spirit of the African. You know, they clearly had to say, I am in hell. What did I do to deserve this hell? What did I do to deserve to be here right now? How did I offend my ancestors to be here right now? To be in this type of place where my whole world is flipped upside down. There's a grown man over here having, you know, masturbatory activity with the little boy. You know, we always just picture them grabbing the women, but no, they were grabbing the men too. You see? So Sometimes there are situations that we're put in. I'm breaking up again. Okay. Hey, I told you I'm getting ready to get out of here anyway. That should have cleared it up. But like I was saying, sometimes we're put into situations that are so shocking to the spirit that we don't really know how to fight back. We don't know when or where we can fight back. And, you know, okay, Diana Williams asked if a molester dies, are they reincarnated? Why wouldn't they be? You know, we all got issues. Hey, let's try this. Those of you, I'm gonna make it real easy for you. Those of you who had mothers who told your fathers, who told you that your father ain't SHIT, when they died, do you think they'll be reincarnated? See, sometimes we hold. I should be clear now, by the way. Somebody let me know. But sometimes we hold one transgression so much higher over another transgression. You see, and you don't necessarily want to do that. That's not the way you want to. That's not the way you want to approach it. You know, so to answer that question, you know, oh, I'm not clear. What? Say what? I should be. I did everything you told me to do. I did all my usual. All right, if I'm breaking up, let me get out of here then. I'll try one more thing and we'll see if it's clear. If it ain't clear, then you know, let me get on to my work for the day. Let me try this. The YouTube's probably gonna kill my picture, my screen share and everything, and cut us off about 10 times. You know, kept breaking up the audio. So it should be clear now. If it's not clear now, then I'm out. All right. Let me know something. And y'all are not letting me know anything, so that makes me feel like it's probably not clear. Clear. Okay, cool. All right. Not clear. Mark said. Some say clear, some say not. I think y'all need to refresh your browsers. I think that's what it is. Okay. But anyway, the question was, I don't know if you heard the question because it was breaking up. Why everybody coming out the woodworks. Okay. All right, ambitious vegan. I see your thumbs up. But thank you for you and everybody else who let me know it's clear. Thank you, Nicole Gordon. Thank you, Mark. Thank you kindly. Diana Williams asked the question, if a molester dies, are they reincarnated? And like I said, why wouldn't they be? Would you look at your mother who poisoned your mind against your father any worse than a molester? Would she be reincarnated? I'm giving you a real life example. I know that feels like I'm picking on a woman, but I'm not, because you know women do that a lot. Let's not, you know, play games with it. You know, would she be reincarnated? You know, we're not really here to determine the intensity of spiritual or moral transgression. You know, everyone is here is here to play a role and to do something. You know, so yeah, why wouldn't they be? Let's see. Designs Not Design says, we see our sisters do that so much when relationships dissolve. Yep. Especially on social media. Yeah. That's why, you know, men, let me tell you something, man. If you meet a woman and you find her on social media and she has more than, let's say she's on Facebook and she has more than 200 friends, walk away. Now, I know the women who are on right now, I say, what? Yeah, well, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the brothers. Walk away. You know, she's got too many fake friends. Something happens, it's going on social media. Even if it's going on in a sly way. You know, she's going to talk about you in a sly way. It's a little, yeah, it's a whole lot of little social media signs to look out for. If I see a woman who has too many pictures of herself, life is too public. She's making everything public, you know. Sister Marva says, it was so overbearing, my mom was afraid. Yeah, see? Fear is something, boy. When you're not properly sheltered and covered and protected, and you're not connected to the men in your family, the real men, because the real men will chase away those deviant males like that, or they should, you know, when they're allowed to properly police and order their families as they should, you know. Sister Kia says, I fought back too. My stepdad transitioned at an early age. My Emma stayed with him after I told her. Yeah, they, you know, most time a woman is not going to give up her penis for her child. That's just the reality of it, man. I know that's harsh, and I know people are going to say that ain't true because I would do anything for my child. I know. I deal with this every day. All right, I get clients and people that I work with every day. I deal with this all the time, man. You know, 9 times out of 10, she's not going to give up that penis for a child. That's why you can tell her, he did this to me, he did that to me. She'll pretend like she didn't even hear what you just said. You know, Lo says, especially if she got Instagram, Snapchat, Periscope, just run. Yep. Unless it's for business. If it's for business, that's different. And I mean real business, not them fake businesses sisters be talking about. They have a real business. Then, you know, it's a little bit different. But if you go on her page, man, she got 1,500 friends, 2,000 friends, you know, and man, don't get with that. You asking for trouble. Because, you know, these social media platforms they're really the breeding ground for whoring, and for attention whoring, not whoring, excuse me, for attention whoring. That's what they're designed for. You know, you get a female, she'll show a little cleavage, she'll show her thigh, she'll get 300 likes on the picture, and women feed from that attention, whether it's virtual, whether it's for good things, whether it's bad things. Women need attention. That's why if you don't give your woman attention, she goes berserk, as she should. You know, now if they are deserving of the attention, you give it to them. Sometimes they act so crazy, you gotta shun them. You gotta pull back attention because they're so dysfunctional. But you know, remember, she craves for light the same way you crave for dark. Same way you need sex, she needs attention. So you find these opportunities through social media to get all of this errant attention, especially from these simpish males. Simpish males that get on there and, you know, oh, you so gorgeous, peace queen, you so beautiful, oh my goodness, I never seen, you know, they just say any old stupid thing. And, you know, a woman could be up there looking real average that day. And that's just how simps respond, but she'll take it. Yeah, there we go. But she'll take it. She'll take the attention. If you're gonna give it, I'm gonna take it. You know, so you find a woman, you get on there, she got 2,000-3,000 friends, man, walk the other way. You know, because she's now been numbed out by a whole lot of unwarranted attention. So she's gonna expect that same degree of maintenance from you. You ain't gonna be able to keep up with social media provides for you. You're just not gonna be able to keep up with it. You know, it's poisonous. And I know, even though I'm telling you that to you, sisters, I know you ain't gonna do anything different. I know you ain't. But at least you know somebody told you. It's poisonous. All that social media stuff y'all do, and you know, now strong mind, strong body, fitness. You keep doing what you're doing. She's. You go to her Instagram, you see what I'm talking about. She puts up some very nice pictures of herself. But you know, she's a personal trainer, so you know she's gonna put up pictures of her working out, and you know, and the results of her working out, of course. But you know, it's for business, of course, right? But I'm telling you, man, those platforms are poisonous to men and women because, from a masculine perspective, they effeminize you. You know, you be arguing with people online. You can't, you know, men, we don't do that. Argue. What are you doing? You know, it's going to come down to some basic things as men. You know, either we don't argue or we fight. That's it. And when we get to a certain age, we don't fight. After 18, you shouldn't really be fighting anymore. So if you're not going to be fighting, then that means you're not going to be arguing. That's got to go too. You know, so you get on those environments, those social media platforms, and primarily all you do is comment on what other men are doing anyway. Doing on those platforms. You know what these NBA stars are doing now? Or you got all these conscious videos breaking down Tiger Woods DUI. Let's break down Kendrick Lamar's saying he's a Hebrew Israelite. You know, it's real effeminate. It's like you sitting around the beauty parlor just chit-chatting about what real men are out there in the world doing. You know, let's break down King James, LeBron James. Let's break down what he just did, or Beyonce, or Jay-Z. What are you talking about that for as a man? Why are you talking so freaking much? You know? Even this segment, I said, man, I was trying to be out of here. I was trying to be out here by 8 o'clock. I'm already way over. I'm an hour and 15 minutes over, but and I'm teaching, but you notice I very rarely comment on what anybody else is doing. That's yeah. Lo says a male sewing circle. That's exactly what it is. It's like a crochet circle. And you sitting there looking over your eyes and over your eyeglasses talking about, well, I ain't one to gossip, but I heard. That's what it basically is. It's gossip. It's very little teaching that's happening. But those social media platforms are poisonous for your testosterone. They're poisonous for your manhood. And for you sisters, unless you on there really teaching or you're running, you're promoting your business, it's poisonous because you start to take on a virtual form of attention, which is dirty light. And it's almost like what males do with porno. They take on a dirty form of masturbation. I mean, most forms are pretty destructive, but they take on a form of dirty masturbation where they start to really enact these rape fantasies. That's really what that's about. You're looking at a woman on screen. She didn't give you permission to have sex with her, but you're over there playing with yourself looking at her until you climax. But she didn't give you permission, you see. And she's doing a whole bunch of things that she wouldn't have done in a normal situation, but she's doing it in that situation. Like, she's not just gonna have oral sex with you because you delivered a TV to her apartment that she didn't order and you force her to pay for it and she ain't got no money. She's not just gonna say, well, let me go down, But you start to think that the suspension of disbelief, you start to really think that's real. So yeah, man, a lot of that media is really poisonous, but some of our people are so addicted to it at this point, I don't even make a point out of it because I'm not gonna be able to pull you away from that stuff. All right, let me get ready to get out of here. Sister Marva says, at this moment, my granddaughters and I are added about posting pics on social media. Yeah, that's a hard one because of the attention. You'll have 13, 14-year-old girls posting pictures in tight skirts and showing their cleavage. The cleavage shots are the number one. That's the cleavage shots, bathing suit shots. And when you talk to them about it, you ever notice that the glaze they get over their eyes? Like, they ain't hearing nothing you saying. When you say, listen, baby, that's not good. I don't, it's not good to do that, to show yourself like that. It's unhealthy. Someone could figure out where you live and attack you and this and that. And there's all kind of predators. They looking right over your shoulder. They ain't thinking nothing about what you're saying. You realize now it's the programming. But with the sisters, yeah, they want that attention. And then you have a lot of effeminized males. They doing the same. They got a whole bunch of pictures of them in the bathroom with their shirt off and, doing all kind of dumb stuff. And, they need that attention. It means everything to them. That's really where that's where they put their work in. Even in the conscious community, that's where they put their work in. I'm banging on, I'm e-banging on the system. It's toxic. It's toxic. For years you've been hearing me say on these shows, man, I haven't been keeping up with my social media accounts. I don't even really post my own stuff. I make the memes and stuff and it's posted for me, but man, I ain't on that stuff. And I got rid of my Facebook because it was too effeminate. And I felt the vibe of Facebook. We just sitting here talking about nothing all day, and then the only conversations of depth are either a whole lot of ego stroking or arguments. That's it. There's no real organization that's happening in those environments, man. And it's effeminate because 9 times out of 10, you're sitting here talking about what other men are doing. 9 times out of 10, you're talking about what other men are doing. And that's very telling. Sister Marva says, Lo says, the little dip pose they do in the pic. Yeah. All the young girls do that when they put their hand on their knees and bend over. And nobody smiles. Everybody has their face twisted up. All funny. It's just corny, man. But it's just like I said, with pornographic material, there was a time when it was very difficult to get porno. You had to look through the squiggly lines on the TV to see if you could see a breast or something. or you went down to the porno shop and snuck in with sunglasses and a trench coat. Peep shows on 42nd Street. Now it's, you can't even fight that fight with children anymore. If they got cell phones, they got access. They're seeing naked bodies. That's where it's at now. So it's the same thing with the Facebooks, and I don't even say Facebook because Facebook is an old person medium. That's for us. Young people ain't think about Facebook, but they're on Snapchat and Instagram, things like that. But the thing is, it's the same type of immediate high you get, but it's a fictitious, artificial, inorganic high. It's the same type of thing, so it becomes very toxic in that sense. Sister Marva says, I'm so against it, and I would talk to them, and these children would tell me, I got to remember I am old. Yeah. If they feel you've lost touch, they're going to feel like you don't know what you're talking about. And that's pretty much the end of the end of discussion. So the way you determine what they're going to post on Facebook or whatever is outside of Facebook. You have certain conversations, or not just Facebook, but social media. Outside of social media, you have certain conversations with them about presentation and what's expected of them, and really what the family represents. What you present to the world becomes important. What the family represents. So that's an important thing, man. You can't do that. Once they get there, especially the girls, once they get there and they start getting those likes and you look so cute today and oh my goodness, and your hair, and it's a wrap. It's like the first time they have boys after them and they find out that they're actually cute. It's too late by then. Let's see. Strong Mind says, yeah, Facebook is not useful and it is extremely dirty. Like, yeah, it is. And it's not even really useful for business because people don't expect to pay for things that they find on Facebook. Facebook is good for a little organizing, but it's really an old medium. It's just better mediums to use at this point. Ambitious Vegan says, not to mention they're always watching you. LOL. Facebook, FBI, Facebook, Instagram. Absolutely. FBI, Facebook, and Instagram. You're absolutely right. So you have that component too, of the monitoring that goes on. Lo says, yeah, I find it hard to post anything on social media. My accounts are so boring because it's stupid to me to have all them apps for what? Yeah. Again, unless you're using it to get the word out or for business or whatever like that, it's really, because as a guy, you start to just express all of your little random thoughts and nobody needs to hear. And even as a female, like sometimes you see people post things for attention. They'll just post something like, I'm not having it today. What are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? And now you can't even tell a complete story anymore. And you find sometimes people who are stuck in that social media world, they communicate like that. They don't communicate openly. They're very ambiguous, in their communication. They're very vague. You never know what the heck they're talking about. They expect you to figure it out, and they expect not to be critiqued or commented on. If they say something that makes no sense, they start to really, that mind takes over them. That Facebook ego or that social media ego becomes their actual mentality. GH says, peace. HBO's Cannibal Cop is an excellent doc. Check it out regarding social media. Okay, he says Cannibal Cop. Cannibal Cop is an excellent doc in terms of social media. There's also a great episode too of what is it? Dark Mirror. Dark Mirror, I think, is the name of the segment. It's on Netflix, and they deal with Dark Mirror. Is like, in my opinion, and I might be saying the title wrong, but I bet Lo knows what it is. Lo will correct me if I'm off. He knows. He always knows the titles, and brother can quote shows. But I think it's Dark Mirror, Black Mirror. See what I'm saying? See what I'm saying? Lo's a historian, but Black Mirror, to me, that's one of the best shows that's ever been made in the history of television. Black Mirror. Awesome show. But they did a component on that show on social media. It would be good for you guys to check out. Very interesting. Yeah, Lo knows. Lo says, man, all my female friends always got a post about relationships or about males. That train is never late. Yep. Yeah, Marvin the Magi. Absolutely. He said, not to mention the poor grammar. Woo. Sometimes you got to struggle through that. And I get tired of that, man. I don't even know what you're talking about. You know, we've learned to communicate like that, man. And it's one of the reasons we're behind the times. The grammar is horrific. Half the time you can't even figure out what and I don't think it's supposed to be figured out. I think it's like graffiti. You're just supposed to enjoy the art of all the words smashed together, but I don't think you're supposed to really try to form a coherent thought or response to what people are putting up on those things. You know, I mean, there is some great things in social media that I do enjoy Instagram. You know, I don't do much on Instagram myself, but I like the idea of it as an artist myself. I like the idea that you can bring to having that direct communication with your fan base. I think that's awesome. You know, like when I look at certain artists, especially old school artists who wouldn't receive the promotion and stuff that they received back in the days, you know, like Ice-T, for instance. You know, he's on Twitter. His Twitter handle is Final Level. I appreciate it, you know, like on Twitter and Instagram, because, you know, he's not playing on the radio at this point and things like that. So it allows certain people who wouldn't have that, you know, that marketing budget to communicate directly with their quote unquote fans in that sense. So I think it's awesome for that, you know, for business. For personal communication, I think it's great for organizing, but it's to organize offline experiences, you know. Lo says the one with Toby Keith. I love that episode. His acting was so on point. When that white girl got set out for porn, right? And all she wanted to do was sing, and the black guy became a face speaker against the system, right? Or when that lady was trying to go to the wedding, yeah, and that's the one. And social media got her and liked so much that she got contained. Yeah, man, you giving away all the plots. Y'all just check out Black Mirror, man. Lowe's over here plot spoiling. but every episode is good. I think they only had like maybe one that was a little weak, but Black Mirror is amazing show. Really makes you think about the role that technology is playing in our lives, and you know, some of the detriment to even the technology, you know. So good segment to check out, man. I'm gonna get out of here because I keep saying it, and every time I say it, y'all put a question in the chat. So I am now hip to your games. So I'm gonna go. All right. I'll be back tomorrow at 10. No, I'm sorry. Tomorrow at 1. I don't have any 10 a.m. segments. I got an appointment today at 10. 30 minutes. Better get on it. But yeah, it is like Twilight Zone. Yeah, it is like Twilight Zone and pumped up a little bit. But it mainly centers around technology, which makes it interesting. But yeah, so we'll be back tomorrow at 1. Getting into more stuff. You got a lot of Yoruba information today, information on the Calabash, information on the Ori. And as far as the candles and stuff, see what y'all doing? As far as the candles and stuff, well, maybe another time, or maybe never. I'm gonna read one last comment from Ambitious Vegan. And she says, the fact, hey, brother Mark, are you Persian, by the way? Just curious. I don't know if you'll get this. I know there's a delay. You'll get it. I know you always respond Kuda Hafiz. You know, I'm just curious if you're Persian. You know. Ambitious Vegan says the fact is people need attention, so they're seeking it from artificial means through social media. Dirty Light. I love when they show this in Suicide Squad. They worship machines now. Yeah. Yep. I mean, it's no different than, you know, dildo. Well, I know there's children sometimes listening, but you know, sex toys, sex bots, you know, or just people who get stuck in texting or instant messaging or social media. You know, it's the same type of thing, you know, always trying to create a barrier between you know, the organic beings. So it's like it's a prophylactic. It's a social prophylactic, you know, creating a barrier between, you know, two beings where there would be some type of chemical or energetic exchange, you know. Coptic Black American. Okay, thank you, brother. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, because I haven't seen you always give your salutation as that, and I haven't seen it in a while. And I know the system that it comes out of. So I was just curious. All right, so everyone, so I'll be back tomorrow. Until such time, seduluhouse.com. You want to be a part of the ministry, anulifeglobal.org. Until such time, peace.